Very excited for you to listen to this episode with my friend Carmen. Carmen is therapist. She does couples therapy as well, and we met each other in Melbourne. She is someone that I trust a lot, and I'm not a couples therapist, so every time I have like couples therapy questions, I go to her. She also has a lot of experiences with uncertainty, having left her corporate job just 3 weeks ago. And in this episode, we hear more about her experience, how she navigates that. We also talk a lot about being therapists, what goes on in our brains, what happens in our friendships, as therapists, maybe seeing certain things, but not being in the right capacity or space to point it out to our friends and how we feel about that, and some common misperceptions about therapy and couples therapy. It's a very exciting episode and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for spending time to do this with me, and I thought it would be good for us to, for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do, and maybe you can share how we met too.
Okay, well, which one should I start off with? Maybe I'll just start off with how we met first,
Yeah.
and then it kind of leads to that. So, interestingly, I actually, before this podcast, went and scroll and see which year we met. Because the, the life in Melbourne sort of like merged and I don't remember which year it was. So basically we met through a mutual friend. So I went to Melbourne on a scholarship for like my master's in counselling, and I met a friend, and then the friend actually texted me and said, like, she has a friend that is interested in doing the masters in counseling as well. And I think that's kind of how we got linked up together. And I just remember, like, you were very friendly on the text and stuff, and then we kind of wanted to meet, and we went to meet at a ramen place. And it was quite funny because it's a very interesting feeling that I felt. Like, the moment I saw you and then we started talking, it felt like very supernatural from the start. So when I meet people, right, my gut feeling sometimes is a bit like there's like this inkling of like whether this person is okay, not okay. But then it wasn't that. It was just very natural. Yeah. And I think that's kind of how we met, through ramen. I think we spoke nonstop during the lunch. And then I think after that it was just quite natural, where we kept just asking each other out, and the friendship just kind of grew from there. Yeah. Yeah.
I miss you so much. Yeah, I miss how we can just like, text each other and then just meet up in the CBD and have coffee, matcha, a meal.
Yeah.
And now we are
Yeah.
so far apart. But we are
Yeah.
meeting soon in Malaysia.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the context of like where we were. We were both in Melbourne, and then I moved back to Malaysia. And then yeah, so that kind of leads to about a little bit about me, right? So I met Jasmine when I was doing my master's in counseling in Melbourne. So my background has always kind of been in the field of like mental health. Like I did my bachelor's in psychology, and I went to doing some social work and then mental health recovery coaching. And then now with my masters, I'm doing mostly individual and also couples work in terms of therapy, but mostly couples and relationships. And in terms of like job, I just quit my full-time corporate job, and I'm doing client work full-time now. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Thanks for sharing. And I also wanted to say, when I met you for the first time, I am someone that gets a vibe of the person quite quickly. And for me, it's also like what you said, like, I think my kind of sensor is for safety, like whether I feel comfortable and safe with the person. And to be honest, there are very few people in my life that I feel this way. And I really appreciated always having you around, like physically or over text, because I don't know, like, I just feel safe. I feel like we can talk about anything and I don't really have to censor myself. And as I said to you before, I don't feel our age gap at all, like 0. So for context, Carmen is 6 or 7 years younger, right? Yeah, I think so.
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I don't feel it at all, which is quite rare.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, so I really appreciate our friendship. And I'm so glad
Yeah.
that we are, having this conversation now. I'm also so excited for your journey ahead that you just quit your corporate job and now doing therapy full time. Shall we start with how it feels and how that journey has been, like this transition, transition period for you?
I think it's a pretty good flow, right? Because I think like what you said just now, even after we like after I moved back to Malaysia, it still feels very safe to like be able to like text you and talk to you. And it kind of feels like I think initially I think it's a bad habit where I'm not the best like quick like replier, especially when I was very busy with corporate job. So it felt like our conversation never ended, never ends.
Yeah, it's still continuing.
Yeah, it's still it's still there. So I think throughout even this period of transition, I think like you were one of like the biggest safe space as well. Cause I think it was always very inspiring to see how you also quit like your full-time job back then and then kind of bravely did what you did. And I think because like even though I don't feel the age gap, but I do feel like because I do look up to you in a certain way, right? Because of like not because of the age gap, but because you are older in that sense. So then I always felt quite nice that throughout this transition period, me making a decision to quit my corporate job and then actually doing freelancing, I felt like just having you to like bounce off certain ideas or certain fears and anxiety helped a lot. But right now it's been I think 3 weeks since I quit my full-time job and I've been better. I think if this conversation were to happen last week or the week before,
Mm.
I think I would have told you that my nervous system feels like it's very different and scary and I'm in danger because I'm not doing so many things all at once. I've always been doing a lot of
Mm.
things all at once. But I think it's a nice feeling now. Like I'm slowly settling in, just letting the uncertainty kind of take its place and its course. So yeah, I'm feeling
Mm.
quite calm this week.
Nice to hear. Was there anything that you did or to feel better, or do you feel like it's a natural thing, like with time that uncertainty settles or becomes a new norm and you just accept it naturally?
I think it's like maybe talking to people about it, but also just letting myself be and like
Mm.
filling the time with things that I enjoy doing more. Cause I think the first week it was like whenever I have gaps, it's either like I overthink about it or I just like kind of shut down and just my body just kind of want to go to sleep. But then the last week or so, it's like doing things that I want to do, like actually letting myself watch Netflix shows that I haven't watched in a while, or like going out with friends, or doing things that I like to do, like actually going out by myself. And then I realized the flexibility is actually quite nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The
So
best
then
part.
I think it's yeah, yeah. Which is weird because it used to be a very scary thing, the
Mm.
flexibility.
So once you started like injecting those things that you enjoy doing, would you say then your nervous system also feels like it sees the good parts of this lifestyle as well? And then I don't know, like maybe it balances out that anxiety. Is that how it feels?
Yeah. And I think it's like it's like a long time due, right? Because like I'm like the type of person that even before this phase of life, so like even in Melbourne, while studying, I was also working and then doing my placement. And then I remember thinking like, I've always wanted to just rest. Like I always complain to my partner, like I want to rest, I want to rest. And then the moment I get like a free time, then you see me like just sitting on a couch, like what do I
Yeah.
do with myself? And then
Mm.
I will like slowly toggle to like and take my laptop, put it on my lap, and then like open it up, and then start doing work. So it's such a uncertain thing. But then right now I'm feeling like I'm actually letting myself have those time where I'm just like doing something creative or just going out or, just being by myself. I think the comfort
Mm.
is slowly building up more, which is good. Yeah.
Thing about not being able to rest is something that I feel a lot of people resonate with. What was your experience going from not being able to rest, have to take your laptop and do something, to now being able to, okay, I'm just going out for a walk. I don't need to be working all the time.
I think it took me quite a lot of like sitting with the discomfort of um the anxiety around it because I think
Mm.
the moment I can empathize with like myself in terms of like why I feel so hard to rest in the first place, I think that
Yeah.
shifted a lot because I think the moment like what I noticed is like the moment I rested like before, then it's like this inner voice that goes like, hey, like, you could have been doing something more productive,
Mm,
you should be doing this. It's a very critical inner voice that I have that
yeah.
tells me that rest is not okay, which I understand where it came from because rest was
Mm,
never really a privilege to have before, like growing up. But then now, because I understand it and I know like, it's a part that's coming up to try to protect me from
mm,
things that I felt before, then I'm able to empathize with it and let the discomfort kind of be there, but then also do things very intentionally to make sure that I'm also getting the fun and play into my routine. And that's kind of when the nervous system is like, oh, okay, like you can do these things, but also still be
mm,
okay,
mm.
like responsibly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of how it is. It's still a battle between like my inner critic voice and like my more compassionate voice, but it's just knowing that these two things exist helps a lot.
Be able to hold them at the same time, right? Just it sounds like you just building a relationship with your parts and
Yeah.
having that conversation. Sounds very much like how you would give therapy to someone, but you do it on yourself and cultivate that relationship that actually rest is okay. Look at the evidence that hey, we rested and we are fine. In fact, we are even better, like we feel better as a whole. Yeah. I am wondering how you use the term sit with the discomfort, right? A lot of times people say they want to leave their full-time job where and then stop receiving a stable income. But a lot of people also stop in their tracks because of the lack of financial stability. For you personally, as you are navigating, transitioning from getting a stable income to now not knowing how much you're going to have every month, how do you sit with it or process it?
Hmm. I think that's a very important one, right? Because I think the whole like wanting a freelance, flexible life might be something that people talk about a lot in terms of like
Yeah.
a dream or a want, right? But then there's
Mm,
obviously this big load of like the financial insecurity. I think my decision wasn't like an overnight thing. So just for like context, I think since October till April, I've been
mm,
working like 7 days a week. So 5 days my full-time job and then 2 week like the weekends, half days I've been
mm,
doing like my client work. And I think by January, so October, November, December, January. So by the fourth month, I already realized that I'm quite burnt out. And as like a responsible therapist, I know like it's not great for myself and also for the client. It's not great for them because
mm.
I'm not like at my best state, right?
Yeah.
So then I told myself, okay, but I know that financially I still need to have some form of buffer first before I can actually make the decision. So I told myself, let's give
Mm,
ourselves like a half a year buffer
mm,
before seeing. So that I actually gave myself a timeline till July. Like June, July, let's decide whether it's just client work or is it like, now in this state of your life, focus on full-time job first, right?
mm,
And then I think it kind of fast forward a little bit my timeline just because the full-time job, some internal switches happened and I had to make a decision quicker.
mm,
And by that time, I think in April, I was like, okay, I already had enough saving buffer and I feel
mm.
like in terms of like my day-to-day expenses and stuff with the savings, I'm okay. So then
Yeah.
I'm like, that's why I was able to. So it's more of like I don't think even though like as much as I want the flexibility now and the free will to do these things, I still feel like there's this other responsible side of me that's still quite strong, which is will plan ahead first. So it's like I had to plan ahead, but then it just got like brought forward like 2 months in advance, my decision in that sense.
Mm,
And even though it was still very scary, like the fear is still here. And when I say sit with it, I don't think it's gonna just disappear. Like it's just more of
mm,
like I knew that I made the right decision. So I think that helps. Like,
mm.
I'm actually doing what I want, I'm leaving a place that doesn't align with me anymore. So those things feel right and it helps with the financial fear aspect. But it's like I'm also telling myself it's not like I'm not doing anything right now. It's not like I'm just not doing anything and not finding ways to
Mm,
also get the income in. I think that helps a bit. So a bit of like just accepting that the fear will just keep being with me and it's
mm.
okay, like it's there for a reason. But then there's also another part that will still do its responsibility to make sure that things are afloat and things are coming in as well. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, I like how you say that the fear is there and wouldn't leave, because I think a lot of times people expect or hope that the fear disappears, and only when the fear disappears, then I will take the next step, right? It's like it needs to be like everything needs to be in order before I go. And then because that is not possible, then the going never happens, right?
Yeah.
Unless, okay, a lot of times what I hear is unless they are forced to.
Mm.
Somehow life found a way to nudge you or like kick you off the path that is not right, and then people leave. But oftentimes what I hear is that, oh, I cannot quit now because blah, 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 and that life is great, but I cannot. I think what I hear very often is I cannot do it. And people often forget that they have a choice in any circumstance, but that choice comes with consequences. So it's not that you don't have a choice, it's whether you are willing to take the consequences that come with the choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're right.
And for you, what are some of the consequences? Sound a bit negative, but I can't find another word.
The impact of
Impact.
the choice.
Yeah, like on your journey.
I think just following what you said just now, that I can't pick the choice. I feel like we had this conversation a lot before, maybe in like December, January, where I will probably tell you the same thing, like, I can't do it right now and things like that. And I think a lot of it is to do with like finances and like responsibility as well. But then I think like what you said, I think your point was very true, which is the people think like things will align and then the fear will go away. So I think that was also
Yeah.
my state of mind at that point of time. But then I realized that it's the same thing, like it's the relationship with the fear or the anxious part, right? It's just never gonna go away. And maybe the impact might mean that after making this decision, that this voice will be a bit louder for a while, right? But it's like being able to hear it as like a information in terms of like why is it kind of coming up in the first place, and like what is it trying to tell you? Is it really like a fear of something, or is it just there because you have never tried this before, which makes sense. Like obviously it's scary to never be in this path. So I think the impact or the consequences of it is just having more time to get to know this fear a little bit more. I think. Yeah. And it comes with all the other things that I want in life, which is a lot of time now on my hand, a lot of flexibility now on my hand,
Yeah.
which is something that I would never think that I would have gotten in this few years in the first place. I think it's because of like the whole like the Asian culture mindset. Like we've always learned that finish uni, get a full-time job, and then you can just kind of just work till the rest of your life, or you own a business, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like that trajectory. But to me, owning a business or like just running a business has never been in the cards in that sense. So then to me, then for career, my view has always been get a full-time job and then just work lor. Just work till the end. So then now that I'm like not in that state, then I'm like, oh, okay, then that means that I would always have to sit with this has always been the plan, but this is not it anymore, which is why the fear and anxiety comes up quite a bit. So I think it's just learning how to take it like one step at a time. Like, like literally like step by step. I think the step by step thing is really important over here.
Yes, I agree with you. And similar to you, yeah, maybe an Asian thing. It's like the responsible thing to do also, right? To make sure that you have money coming in, you can support yourself and support your parents or kids if you have kids. And that path of carving your own path, not knowing maybe 5, 10 years whether it will take off, whether you're still going to do this thing, is something that we don't encounter very much. I think more nowadays, but like growing up, maybe not so much. A lot of that discomfort, I feel, also comes with not having enough people around us who are doing it. And then seeing that it is successful, right?
Yes.
Because the nervous system needs to see evidence, not just that
Yeah.
people are doing, these people need to be successful, or
Yeah.
not exactly successful in the sense of making a lot of money, but successful in the sense of they are doing it, they have enough, and they are enjoying their lives. Because increasingly nowadays, it's not just about financial freedom. It's also time and energy freedom that we are,
Yeah.
like, I guess this generation, we are also looking for. So seeing people around us walk down that path and being able to achieve these, I feel like, at least for me, was one of the greatest inspirations and also what gave me the most courage to take that step. I'm
Mm.
not sure if it's the case for you, but I think taking that step is it's just extremely scary. Like, I don't know how to, we as therapists, we have all the tools, we know how to, like, be in relationship with ourselves. But when the time comes to actually do it, the kind of conversations inside can be so loud, right? Like, are
Yeah.
you sure you're going to do this? What are you missing out on? Are you really okay? You don't have money every month. How much are you going to earn each month? Wow, it just comes, right? Like, no matter how well educated you are in this aspect, there are some things that because of our upbringing, it can get quite overwhelming. But what really grounds me is the evidence of seeing people doing it. And it's also
Mm.
one of the reasons why I started this podcast to, expose all of us to different lives and different paths. Because I don't know, like, a lot of us, we hear the stories that we hear are just people around us. And for some reason, we will always be around people who are quite similar to us and want the same
Mm.
things, at least at the point that we knew each other.
Yep.
So if you have university friends, then they kind of just quite similar, the
Yeah.
life trajectory. So yeah, like, I think there's so much benefit in hearing stories and journeys of people who are different from us, just to get inspiration or just to see how it's like, whether that's something that I might like to do also.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. And I think it's also like the whole like what you said just now, right? I think the step just now when I mentioned, even though the fear is still there, but like that relief and like that alignment is also the happiness
Mm,
aspect, right? Because it's like um I think someone told me this not not very recently, but recently enough, where like, we work like 85% of our day to day. Like that's just kind of how
mm,
like the average people, like, you wake up 9 to 5, 9 to 5, and you work like
yeah.
80 to 90% of the time, then wouldn't you want to do something that actually makes you happy? Right.
Mm,
And I think that struck with me. Like, I don't know why. Like, even though it's such a simple question, but it struck with me. Then I'm like, oh, like, am I happy doing what I was doing, right? And then to a
yeah.
certain extent, yes. But then it's like, but I'm not doing exactly what I want to do. And like you
Mm,
said, like the choice element seems so blurry because it's like
yeah.
a choice, but then there's like consequences and stuff. But then I think like the moment you take that first step, even though
Mm,
after that the next few steps will still feel very scary, but the moment you take the first step, if it feels right, then I
yeah.
think then you can like find comfort in that, like, at least you did that for you, because
Mm.
then you are now in charge of like 80 to 90% of your day to day or your week.
Yeah, yeah, I like what you said. You did that for you. And I want to add on to that a lot of Asians, when they hear that, then they feel that it's selfish, right?
Yeah.
Because we are like a collectivist culture, and they feel like, oh, I shouldn't be so selfish. If I have less money, that means I have less money to give my parents, like that kind of stuff, that kind of narratives, which is very normal, very understandable. At the same time, what I would add to that is I agree with you. And in response to like what something inside us might say, is that when we are better versions of ourselves, everyone around us benefit. And this benefit is not always tangible and financial. You might be earning a lot and contributing a lot in the household, but if you are not a good version of yourself, or not a, grounded presence, it is going to affect people around you as well in an emotional way. And I feel like that is what we don't see or talk about enough, right? So what if you contribute a lot financially? Are you, for example, maybe having enough time to spend with your kids or your family? When you are actually spending time with them, are you in a good state, or are you thinking about work because that work is giving you so much stress?
Yeah. No, and I like why you said that, because that was kind of what was in my mind, right? Which is the like literally like word for word, which is what you said about like, are you actually like with the work that you're doing, if you're unhappy or if you're burnt
Mm,
out, then how much of
yeah.
you and the best version of you are you giving to
Mm,
people around you as well? And I think that's also a little bit about kind of why it was easier for me to take that step, because I'm
Yeah.
thinking like 7 days, I'm giving my time to work, right? And then
Mm.
I only have like that little space of like maybe time that I get to spend with like mom or family. And then during that time, I'm just already so tired, right?
Mm.
So I'm there, like maybe I'm there in person, but like I can't really have like full on conversations or like, actually be present. I don't know if you noticed this, but I also realized that because I've been so tired and go for so many years, right? That is why my replying tendencies is so bad also. And I realized
Mm.
that now I have more time to intentionally reply people. I might not be like great in a sense of like I will reply them immediately, but then I feel like I'm more intentional in my responses, and I'm more intentional
Mm.
in like checking in on my friends or like checking in on people. And I feel like I like that and I miss that, rather than just my brain and my time is just filled with like work in that sense. Yeah. And
Mm.
I think that's very
Mm.
important.
Like you need time and space to do all those things, right? If your day is already packed, where do you find that space to check in with a friend that maybe you haven't spoken to in 2 weeks? You may not even realize that you didn't
Mm,
reply to that person, for example.
mm,
And these are a lot of like very intangible things that cannot be measured by money. And as you said earlier, of course, money is important, right? Like in our day to day, we cannot survive without money. At the same time, I think it's so important to pause and consider how much money do we actually need to live a meaningful life to ourselves. Because you can always earn more money. That's the thing. Like it never stops. And I think that is really like a capitalist trap, right? That with money, I can do all these things. But when you actually have the money, but you have so much stress, do you have time to spend the money? Are you in a good state or good space where you spend that money?
yeah.
And I think once you get into that trap or that wheel, you already don't have time to pause to
Mm.
consider all these things. Or like you had a lifestyle inflation and then you can't accept a lower income anymore. And that's how a lot of us get trapped.
And I think like to your point about like the finances, like if you work a lot and then go on like holidays and stuff, but it's still a cycle, right? Which is you work, like you burn yourself out like 90% of your year, and then you go on like one big holiday, like with the mindset that it might heal you, and then you go back into the same cycle again. So I think with the whole money thing, what I noticed is that the mindset shifted when I realized that it's little more intentional day to day stuff that helps, rather than like big
Mm.
changes. Like, because I think like people are like, the common misconception is that burnout and then you do one big thing like a big spa or big massage or like something that it will cure your burnout, that kind of thing. But then it's
Yeah.
really the day to day, like how you fill up your time and stuff. And I think for me, I've always been such a relational person, and with
Mm.
the working 7 days a week, I feel like I've lost a lot of like, not that I've lost friends, but it's like lost the time to even connect with people. And I think that's not
Mm.
something that I want to live with the next part of my life, or even until whenever. Yeah. So I think that helps a little bit as well when
Mm.
the financial insecurity comes up. But then I'm like, oh, but we're okay, and I'm having all this time to do these other things as well.
And you are also like even in your business pausing to reflect, right, on what is the trade-off and what is the loss of, having this kind of schedule. But a lot of people they don't. So what is your advice or what would you recommend for people who are in that kind of cycle, but maybe don't even pause and consider? Because I do feel like if more people paused to reflect, to consider, how have things been? Do I need to change anything? Then I would think that many people would make very different choices in life. I mean, whether they act on those choices is another thing, but to reflect in the first place.
I think while you were saying that, I think kind of what also have been like a long time influence is that with the therapy work that we do with our clients, like I'm not sure if you ever use this, but like in ACT, we talked a lot about values, right? And then like how
Mm.
when there's like a discomfort, and even if you're like living aligned to your value, there might be also discomfort, but a different type of discomfort, but at least there's like an alignment. And I think the whole reason why I would pause is because I think to a certain extent the misalignment was very loud already. So I
Mm.
think that's why I was able to like pause and see like what's really going on.
Mm.
Because I was worried that it was like whether it's like a misalignment that is so loud, or is it like I'm avoiding, or am I just too tired, that kind of thing. But I think like
Uh,
if I were to, I think it was because I've learned to like, if something is so uncomfortable, like really kind of listen to it. I think that's like the
Mm.
first step, the willingness to want to listen. And the listening might also bring more discomfort, but at least listening gives you more information to decide, or whether it's like inaction or action to your next kind of course of action, or whether you're making a
Mm.
decision, right? So I think the willingness to be curious about the discomfort is very important. I think that's the
Mm.
only reason why I made different decision, was because the discomfort was a bit too loud already. And
Yeah.
I wish that I didn't have to wait for so long. But again, no regrets, because I was planning the more practical aspect of things. But I think if
Mm.
that's the first place to start, is really like, if something really feels off, and if you really feel unhappy, and like you're kind of on like an autopilot every day, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Like you don't have to be on autopilot. You can also kind of just check in and reflect kind of what you value. Because I think something that occurred to me was this person that told me that they were a bit annoyed at their friends for not working and like retiring early. And I think that made me feel a bit upset, because I was like, but what if that person values family time more? What if that
Mm.
person values leisure more? What if that person values like doing nature stuff more, right? Then that's okay.
Ah.
Whereas like you value career, right? So then that's okay. Like it's not like
Mm.
it has to be all one trajectory. So like then maybe it's just pausing and being curious, like what do I actually value in life,
Mm.
and
Mm.
can I live a little bit more aligned to it, rather than what everyone tells me to live, in that sense. Especially in our
Mm.
culture, I think we've been ingrained with what's good for us and what's the best
Yeah.
route and stuff like that, right? So then it makes sense why you're in it. But then I think it's really just pausing and not judging your own values, and checking in whether you can live a little bit more aligned to it helps.
I
Mm.
like what you said about noticing what your values are, noticing what society values as well. And it may not be aligned. Of course, a lot of times if it's aligned, then you have an easier life, right? Because there is no resistance. And then I would say, good for you. But
Yeah.
not everybody. I mean, that's the reality as well, that choosing a different path is gonna be harder. At the same time, if your values belong to a different path and you try to force fit yourself to that path, the societal path, then I would say that's even harder, right?
Mm.
And what you brought up about friends is also so important, like people around us having different values. So important to recognize that your friends might value different things, and that is their choice, and their choice have their natural consequences that maybe you are not willing to bear, but maybe they are very happy to go through them. So it's also a lot about, once we understand this part on values, we also stop judging others. And actually, when we stop judging others, we also stop judging ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Because, I
That's
mean,
true.
we also know when there is something inside us that is critical, that critic points outwards, he also points inwards most of the time.
Yeah.
Like someone who's
Yeah.
very critical of others usually is very critical of themselves. Someone
Mm.
who's very critical of themselves usually very critical of others as well. It's like both ways. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it also brought up this thought of, because the way we grew up, there are certain values that society deems as better, and we for so many years have just gone along with that. It is also, that process of knowing our own values actually is also very difficult.
Yeah.
Right? It takes time, it takes a lot of reflection, it takes a lot of conversations to then finally land on, oh, I never realized that actually I value energy freedom a lot. You may not even
Mm.
know, that's the thing. And I think that is also why a lot of people, they say like, oh, I don't like this job, but I also don't know what else to do because I don't know what I like. I
Yeah.
hear this so often, like, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I like. And then so people just choose to stay in the status quo, which is what they know doesn't work.
Mm.
Because that process of excavating what they actually like can be so, I mean, it's daunting because it's the unknown, right? Like if you
Yeah.
are very used to a stable job, but you realize that what you like is to be a digital nomad, for example,
Yeah.
then it means you have to do the hard work to move towards that. And I
Yeah.
think that is what a lot of people, that is what a lot of people back from doing the inner work as well. Because as therapists, we also know that doing the inner work it's a very rewarding process, but a lot of things also come up at the same time. And then action needs to be taken in a certain direction to actualize
Yeah.
what you want.
Yeah.
The result is amazing. The process, not always not
Mm.
always enjoyable. Right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I think like you said just now, right? I don't think I fully know like what I truly like value and want yet. I think it's a process, and I think it's
Mm,
okay for people to also know that like, but which is why I say like the first step is really like identifying like if the mundane or the job or like the thing just feels very uncomfortable, then maybe
uh,
it's something worth listening to, right? Because I think I didn't realize that I wanted so much freedom and time. Like, I've always been like that. I don't like this word anymore. Like growing up, people will always call me like this responsible, disciplined girl. Like I don't like that
mm,
anymore. But I used to like it because I'm like, oh, you call me responsible, I'm good. But then that's because growing up, that was complimented. So people
yeah.
complimented that part. So I'm like, this feels nice. People see me as this, and I like that. But then
Mm,
as I grew older and older, then when I'm actually in the job and like meeting different people, then I realized like I actually don't like it. Like I don't like being called that way. Like, I would rather you call me like that person that is like that likes arts, or like that person that like likes to do fun
mm,
things, which is things that I really, really like to do but never gotten to do. So I understand like when certain people kind of reach a point where they realize, oh my gosh, like my values is completely out of what I'm doing right now. But then it's also like it doesn't have to be like a big step immediately also.
true.
Like any small steps to align a little bit by little bit might make you
Mm,
feel a little bit better rather than kind of just going through the motions of like what is being put onto you since you were very young that you thought was your own identity. But I think
mm.
our body has a good way of telling us when things are not that doesn't feel right as well. So just really have to listen to that.
And that's such a good point about how it doesn't need to be a big step. I feel like a lot of people also they look ahead and it's like, but the thing that I want is so unachievable. So never mind, But as you said, there are so many small steps that we can do to align ourselves to that kind of life that doesn't even need even involve you quitting your job, for example. But
Mm,
can really make a difference because when we live in alignment or like not even complete alignment, but greater alignment, it actually feels so much more spacious and grounded within. And then it
yeah,
really comes out in our interactions, in the way we look at life. It just makes a whole lot of difference. And people around you can feel it.
can tell.
And you
Yeah.
will be able to feel it as well.
Mm,
I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned about, we work for such a huge part of our day. How do you do something that you don't enjoy or something like that, right?
mm.
What would you say to people who always complain about their work, the job, don't change anything about it? And then the reason is that I just see my job as something to earn money. Yeah,
Mm.
what is your response? Say if it's like a friend, like not a super close friend, but like a friend.
I think it goes back down to the values aspect, right? Like I don't see anything wrong with like the person saying that, like, which is what you said just now. If you're choosing to align in this way, or if your value is this, then it comes with different consequences as well. So if the
Mm,
person is telling me like I really value, I think I literally just had a conversation with a friend the other day where she told me that I don't mind working hard, I don't mind working long hours as long as it gives me high monthly reward. And I
mm,
remember sitting there and I'm thinking, that's great. That's great for you because like I don't think I can. I mean, I've tried for the last 5 to 6 years to actually just keep working hard, and hopefully the end goal is to get like a lot of money. But I think
yeah.
along the way I lost myself, and that's not okay with me. Whereas if I think I remember telling her like that's good, like if you feel like that's the value, which is
Mm,
maybe you're planning ahead, like maybe in the next 20 years you want to retire early, or you want to have like a certain financial pool of money, then this is kind of what you need to get there because that is what
mm,
you value. Then that's kind of what you need to do, lor. But then if
mm,
I'm hearing friends, which I also have like a friend that came to mind, which is not about the money and stuff, but yes, money is one part, but it's just dreading going to work
yeah.
every single day, then I would probably be quite curious and ask them to be curious a little bit about like whether it's really just about the money, or is it because people kind of tell us that's kind of why we're working for, or is there
Mm,
something else that you feel like you might be a little bit happier if you had more in your life rather than just kind of working. But
Mm.
I also believe that that's one part, but the other part, which is if you are stuck in something and unable to leave that place, means that stuckness or that part is still serving a purpose. So
Mm.
then maybe it's just not ready to let go, or maybe you don't know what is serving the purpose yet, and you can see if you can kind of shift it to something else.
Mm.
So like for instance, like my taking so long to even make a decision to want to look a different path was because the security served a purpose for a very long time. But then it's
Mm.
to the point where security was not serving a purpose anymore. It just became like a misalignment and burnout and tiredness. Then only I was able to listen to it and move away from it. But as
Mm.
long as something serves a purpose, whether it's good or bad for you, if it feels safe, I think it's hard to go. But I think
Mm.
it's good to know why something so unhappy is still serving a purpose.
Yeah, yeah. And as you said, you noticed that that part of you was serving a purpose. And I guess also maybe being a therapist, you're attuned enough then to have that relationship and conversation with it, right? And then you understand that it's serving a purpose and then check whether that purpose is still needed right now, whether there's
Mm.
still a function in your current context. And then when you realize not, then some shifts may be necessary. And I'm just wondering, okay, as therapists, we can see a lot about someone else's situation. And we cannot always tell them, right? It may not be our place. It may not be okay, let me just give you an example. I think it's easier that way. Say you see a
Mm.
friend who's very stuck in their jobs and keep going in the loops of like complaining but not getting out. And let's say you know this friend well enough to actually see what the issue is, but you're not their therapist. But because you know
Mm.
them for such a long time, you actually can tell what it is. And that stuckness, yes, is serving a purpose, might have served a purpose in the past, but right now you can tell that it is not based on your knowledge of this person.
Mm.
When we are working with clients, we are in the space where we know how to guide them towards certain realizations on their own. But when it's a
Yeah.
friend, especially like if it's a dear friend of yours, you want the best for them. And at the same time, you're not their therapist, but you can see exactly what it is, right? What would you do?
Yeah. I feel like this is like the overarching occupational hazard that we have, right?
I know, right? Yes, yeah. I
It's like
find it
the
so hard.
do Yeah, yeah. It's like the do we help, but then how do we help as a friend versus not?
Yeah.
I think if I'm very, very close to the friend, I think I would just
Mm.
reflect back what I notice or observe
Mm.
based on how I know them and stuff. But then I think that I still believe like the choice will be something that people will make only when they're ready. Because I feel like
Yeah.
maybe as a friend, all we need to know is just to get them to realize like what we see might
Mm.
be something that maybe they don't see, or maybe they already know, but maybe someone just kind of telling them that, and like them parking in like their brain, and then it's maybe enough for them to
Mm.
remember it when they're ready to make the decision. Because I think a lot
Mm.
of times like, we know, even like with clients, we know like they kind of know most of the
Yeah.
time what is best for them, but may not be ready to take those steps. And I don't think
Mm.
it's our job as friends to guide them per se, unless they're like really
Mm.
asking for it, but it's a bit blurry
That's
in terms
true.
of that. But I think it's more of like just telling them like, I'm your friend, I noticed this, and this is kind of what I'm seeing. But this is just the information for you, and then kind of how you want to deal with it is up to you. But then I feel like with friends that are very stuck and I feel like they're open to maybe exploring their individual work, then I will also refer
Mm.
them to like, you go for therapy, maybe might help, that
Mm.
kind of thing.
Mm.
But I try to just like give them information of like observation so that they can kind of just take it, and then up to them what they want to do with it. So
It's also a lot of just holding that space and then just watching it, right? Like, which sometimes can be such a difficult thing to do because sometimes it involves also seeing someone suffer where you
yeah.
know that maybe there are some things that could have cut short the suffering. I mean, we
Mm.
also know that some suffering is needed and some paths, as hard as they might be, need to be walked by some people for certain realizations to reveal themselves. And then we can only watch and then hold the space for the people around us as we watch all these things pan out.
Yeah.
You mentioned about suggesting that some friends maybe might benefit from therapy. Do you ever feel a bit conscious saying that? Or for you, it's something that you will just say if you feel like it?
I feel like it depends on who I'm talking to. Generally, I think I will always like preface it like, I go for therapy too, like, that kind of thing. Like,
Ah,
you don't need like,
okay.
I think also cause like the culture that we're in, therapy is
Mm,
still such a taboo. It's getting better, but still
yeah.
generally people will feel like I need to be completely like not okay on the spectrum to be able to go seek help. But then I
Mm,
think when I open up and say like, I see clients, but I also go for therapy too, that kind of thing, to like try to normalize
yeah.
a little bit. And then telling them like, oh, you're stuck here, I can't really do the whole therapy process for you. So maybe like,
Mm,
if you want this, I feel like it might be beneficial. So I would just put it out there. If you're close
mm,
enough, if you're close enough. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I asked that question because I noticed that I always hesitate, but I also feel like it's a bit of a friend and professional duty to raise it when
Mm,
I see it because I can't be the therapist and I can't always be pointing things out. But I also feel like it's not helpful to not point it out. But I also
yeah.
don't want to be the irritating therapist friend, like, always like observing people, psychoanalyzing people. It's like part of us and we can't like not.
Turn it off, right?
Yeah, correct. And so at some points, I also feel like it actually is a bit of a professional responsibility to also raise it when you see certain things and not.
Mm,
Yeah, sometimes I also am like trying to balance like, yeah, not being the annoying therapist friend and also being a good friend that actually
yeah.
brings things up when I see certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the line over there, right? Which is the responsibility. I mean, of like our professional responsibility, but the care we have as a friend, maybe we just need to let you know. And then whatever
Mm,
you decide then is not within our control anymore, right? Because I'm also very aware that um for me at least, like there's obviously like this part that started off this career. I mean, when I was younger, thinking that this career was for me to help and fix people,
mm,
for example.
yeah.
So I know that there's still this very young fixing part, which I'm
Mm,
very like I'm very aware of, which is like why when I do bring it up, then is it like I do check in with myself, like am I uncomfortable with their discomfort more than they are? Like
yeah.
then to me it's like maybe I would just kind of lay out to them like, this is what I see that's happening, whether it's like your relationship got problem lah or your work got problem. But then this is what I see lor, right? But if you're okay with it, you're
Mm,
okay with it. But if you're not, then I'm letting you know that there's help out there that you can navigate it, that kind of thing. So I'm also very
mm,
conscious of like, is it a me problem that is discomfort, uncomfortable with their way of life or their discomfort, or is it just them? Or am I implying something, right? So I think the moment I reflect that, I just let them make the decision, which is the
mm,
easiest line that I can see. Unless
mm.
like I have friends that will like vent about their relationship and they're like, Carmen, what do you think? Then I'm like, okay, you're inviting me to like tell you what I
Then you
think.
can say.
Then I will tell.
Yeah, yeah. I think whenever that invitation comes, it's like a relief because you already, without them asking, you are thinking,
Yeah.
right? Just you cannot
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And then when they invite you, you can actually finally say.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you describe the internal check. Like when you suggest something, is it really for them or is it because you are uncomfortable? And I think this is something that is very helpful for like all helping professionals as well, not just therapists, right? Because helping professionals, social work, teachers, healthcare workers, a lot of us went into this job or go into this job because we want to help and we want to see things getting better. And it is a large part altruistic. There will always be a part that is because we feel good doing it and we
Mm.
want to see that change. And rather than trying to convince ourselves that, no, I'm just altruistic, it's not for myself, rather than trying to convince ourselves that, it's actually more helpful to just acknowledge that something inside wants to see that change. And when it doesn't happen, it is disappointed or like maybe sometimes even doubting whether we are in the right profession, doing the right thing, or
Yeah.
whether we are good enough,
Yeah.
right? So you bringing that up, like that checking, is also so important for like others in this line to like when things don't go our way. So for example, like for teachers, when students don't improve the way we wish they would, like especially in terms of their character development, are we able to just hold that space to let the growth happen as it should? Which is very hard to watch, right? Because you can see exactly what the issue is and you want to fix it, you want to help them. Or does it then become like an internal struggle because it becomes so painful to watch them
Mm.
continue this path that we know it's going to lead them to some sort of destruction,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
yeah, the
mm.
internal checking mechanism is so important.
Yeah. And I think it's something to like it's always gonna be there because you kind of want the best for them, right? But I think it also
yeah.
goes back to the whole people will make choices on their own. As much
Mm,
as you feel like you have like I mean sometimes you do have a big influence on people, but then ultimately they would have to make the decisions for themselves, right? And I think it's
yeah.
harder for teachers because they're kids. And I know that's like a bit more like a hands-on thing, but I think it's always very important to check in whether it's like your own discomfort of something or it's
Mm.
actually something else.
And to remember that people have autonomy, they have free will, they exercise their choices, and no matter how much responsibility we take in that relationship, there will always be an element that is not within our control, no matter how much we educate. Or for example, even therapists, like with clients, you can have a session where you decide that, okay, this is the path going forward. And maybe as a therapist, you're like, oh, I'm so happy that the client came to this realization. The next session, they might tell you that they went a completely different path. And yeah, noticing that a part of it is like, oh no, like, but also the role of therapy and being a therapist is to hold the process. It's not like being attached to the outcome. And also
Yeah.
to recognize that they make their own choices and then we just, follow their
Mm,
process.
mm.
So yeah, noticing that part that exists, that wants to help, disappointed, it's just so important, right? Cannot let it
Yeah.
go unchecked and like it will just run
Yeah.
run out through the words that should not be said. That's not
Yeah.
helpful for the client.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we spoke a lot about uncertainty in your current career choices and how you navigate them. I'm also wondering about, how was it like for you growing up? Was uncertainty also like a large part of your growing up years or maybe not? And how do you navigate those situations?
I think in terms of like the trajectory of like my pathway, it's always been very certain, but that is also the outcome of all the other things that was very uncertain around me, if that makes sense. So
Mm,
so for example, like I think if I were to remember in terms of like my own decision making, I've always like strive to plan out my each step and make sure that I've gotten it my own way. So for example, like
mm,
I think 14 years old when I met my school counselor for the first time and I'm like, oh, I really like what she does. She's making me feel so safe and seen. And I'm like, I want to do this, right? And then the
mm,
moment I want to do something, then I will research about it. And then I went into, okay, what path do I need to go to get a bachelor's in psychology? What do I need to do beforehand? What uni, what scholarships are needed, because finances wasn't great at
mm,
that time. So I it's like whatever I can control, I control, that kind of thing.
uh,
So that part was very certain in terms of my life, work, my career, that path, right? Study,
mm,
career path. But that is also because everything else around me felt like it was out of my control a little bit. So
mm,
I think that's kind of where it came from. Like, for example, finances in terms of like inflow of cash and stuff like that was very uncertain growing
mm,
up. Family relationships was also quite uncertain growing up. And so I think because of all these uncertainty on the outside, the only thing that I could control was my own success, if that's the right word. So yeah, I've always had a plan and I've always, which is why I always say, when to this point, right, my anxiety is always with me, but it's been such a helpful part to get to where I am today because of that, because of the anxiety of the uncertainty in life. It
mm,
has pushed me to be this person that is like, you want this, right? Okay, these are the ways to get it. These are the things that you need
uh,
to study. You have to study, get this grade. If you get this grade, you get this scholarship. You get this scholarship, then you get this. Yeah, that part was very certain because I made
yeah.
sure that I had control of it. But it has
Mm.
downsides and it has its repercussion today, but that has always been very certain in that sense.
So what you're saying is that whatever you can control, you can plan, you will do it. And then because you know that the other areas are not certain, like it's like you don't really know what's gonna happen next. And how is it like to then sit with or be with the parts that are not certain? Does it like affect you day to day? And if it does, how do you work through that
The parts that are not certain now or like
in the
previously?
past?
Sorry. So how I deal with it now or how I dealt with it in the past?
How you dealt with it in the past?
Right. Okay. It's ignored it to the point of I was so disconnected to my needs and my body. I think
Mm,
only like maybe in the last 2-3 years is when I've really
mm,
reconnected back to my needs and my body. But from before, it was always like a okay, just focus on your responsibilities and your studies and your capabilities. So like I think like that's why a lot of like my self-worth back then was hanged a lot to my success in terms of what
mm,
I can control. And I really just ignored all the different feelings and emotions that I felt to the point that even when it's like screaming somatically, I used to always have stomach aches, but I'm like, yeah, nothing lah. Like, it's nothing. So that's why I say like I'm very disconnected from it. Only until recent years I've learned to like suddenly realize like, oh, I actually have a body to listen to.
mm,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like the therapeutic, like somatic work that you do
Mm,
as well, right? Like to
mm,
recognize that the body is such a huge part. Actually, it's everything in the process, right? We carry it around with us all the time. And to also acknowledge that maybe in some years, some season of our life, it was for survival that we also needed to focus on certain things and then lost that connection. And when the context has changed, it has become safer for us to connect or we are in a better space, then it's so important to regain that connection because it does make us more whole, more present.
yeah.
What change do you notice about yourself? You said in the past 2-3 years, then you found back that connection with your body.
I think it's a very like I wouldn't even think like it's a glorifying thing. I think it's a very hard thing to regain that consciousness that your body actually exists because that's when all your unprocessed stuff or like all your needs that you have been ignoring so long suddenly are here telling you all these things. So I think what shifted was there was a lot of discomfort. So the healing process was really tough. But again, same like what I said in the start, which is because suddenly my body has like this need and voice, then the critical anxious part that has always been with me is very critical of it. Like, why are you suddenly having all these needs? Like, why are you suddenly making all these decisions that are so selfish? You shouldn't this, you shouldn't that. You could have this, you could have that. But then I think it's what shifted was the empathy that I
Mm,
have inwards. I think I've always been very empathetic towards other people, but I've never been able to be empathetic towards myself. And I think the master's training, the counseling journey, the supervision, the seeing clients has really shifted that quite a bit. It wasn't like
mm,
a big shift, but it was like bit by bit where I noticed that if I can't connect to certain feelings and emotions in my body, I can't really connect with like my clients as well. So
mm,
that's why I was like, if I can be curious about them, why can't I be a bit more curious about like what's happening internally? And I think it's still a process as well.
mm. Yeah, I resonate with what you shared so much about, being able to do it for others, but not being able to do it within, right? Sometimes it's really harder when we are so used to like giving, so used to relating outwards, then we forget that that connection inwards is as important, if not more important first, before we go around the world, like interacting with other people.
Yeah.
And my experience with that is being able to feel a range of emotions. So
Mm,
like for me, anger is hard to access because I never really an angry person until the recent years. I'm also, as in not an angry person, but now able to feel anger. And yeah, for like 30 over years in my life, I just never felt anger. So when it first
mm,
entered my life, I can feel anger. I actually felt a bit excited, like this is like a new feeling.
yeah.
It's like expanding my range of emotions, then also helps me be with my clients' emotions as you shared, right?
Yeah.
Because when I wasn't in contact with my anger was something that was scary for me. So when someone else is angry, not my clients, but like before I was a therapist, when someone else is in my area and is angry, I actually shut down. Like I cannot be in the presence of anger. And I never knew
Mm,
why. I just thought that it's normal, right? Like, why would you want to be with an angry person? And then when I had that contact, then I also realized that now I can hold my presence with people regardless of what they are experiencing. And I think that is so important in the client work that we do because I mean, clients come with all sorts of emotions. And can you imagine, like, if I have a client who's angry and I just shut down because I cannot
Mm,
deal with it?
mm,
Yeah, then
mm,
that would not be professional, right? So I
mm.
think like your experience, feeling your body, is like what I resonate with is my experience experiencing certain emotions that I'm not used to or that I shut off when I was younger because of different reasons.
Yeah. No, and I started smiling when you said anger and inaccessible because I resonate that like with that so much because I think generally growing up, anger was not expressed in a safe way. Like I think that's
Mm,
my most of my life, anger has always been unsafe. Like I've never modeled anyone that is able to be angry and
mm,
like see how they regulate, right? So
right.
then my version of scary anger is like this explosive person and like all this kind of
Mm,
thing. And then some people think like the opposite would be like the passive aggressive one, which is don't be angry at all. And then you see it coming out in like snarky comments and
yeah.
sarcasm, and I think like only in the recent years where I'm slowly learning how to be okay with anger again. I still am trying to understand like my anger process, but what you said like made me laugh because like how people say like when you are dating someone or like when you're generally attracted to people that will keep triggering you so that you can heal your own
Mm,
attachment wounds.
mm,
I always end up with partners that are angry, like
mm.
angry, accessible to their anger type of
Ah,
people.
okay.
And then I realized that it probably reminds me a lot of like my childhood growing up. And I also can see how it might play out the same cycle if my relationship with anger didn't change. Yeah. So it's
Mm,
it's it's quite interesting in
mm.
that sense that if you are not able to comfortably sit with some emotions, then yeah, it's very hard for client work as well. Definitely.
Life will send you a partner for you to learn how to heal your attachment wounds, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, as a couples therapist, I'm sure that's what you see all the time. And maybe we can talk a little bit about your work as a couples therapist,
Mm.
whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Maybe what is something you enjoy most about the work and something that you find the most challenging about being a couples therapist?
I think the root of it stem from the same place. I think I really enjoy when I see how people start to like in session be aware like, oh, like this is why I do this and like this has protected me for so long, but then I don't actually have to do this anymore, right? So for example, if someone has never felt like their needs were listened to or they always felt alone growing up, then they have learned maybe from parents or from attachment figures growing up that you need to be loud, you need to be very demanding and loud about your needs to be heard, right? But
Mm,
then the more demanding and snarky and like the way you say it in a way that is like so loud, actually the other person will not be able to hear it, right? So then it's like getting them to realize like, hey, like you ultimately you want to be heard, you want to be understood. So why not you set yourself up to communicate in a way that can actually get you to be heard and listened to, for example.
mm,
Then it's like then they're like, "Oh, right, I don't actually have to do it this way." That kind of thing. So I think like seeing it unfold in session is the most rewarding thing because like I have two people in the
mhm,
room most of the time, right? And then you can
mhm.
see the other person also understanding like, oh, that's why they do that. Not because they want to attack me, but because they just want to
Ah,
also be heard. So I like the in the moment, in the present repair that is going on
mm,
in couples, which I think that doesn't happen when you're seeing like a person individually because you don't have like the
yeah,
other part that is there, right? So I think I
definitely.
find that the most rewarding when people
Mm,
realize like they can show up differently, which started off with the root of like I see so many people fighting in my early life that I'm like,
mm,
wow, if they knew how to talk properly, then maybe they didn't have to fight so much, right? But then the same thing is also the thing that makes the work challenging. I sometimes often say that I have this little part that feels like it has been mediating relationship my whole life, but
mm,
this little part feels like it's also with me sometimes in the room with my couples as
mm,
well. And it's very scared, it's very anxious because it doesn't know how to navigate conflict, which fair enough, it didn't learn how to when it was
mhm,
young, right? So I think sometimes that part comes up very, very loudly when there's conflict happening in the room. And I think that is still something that is challenging for me, but something that I also need to always remind myself is that my job here is not to fix the conflict anymore. Like my job is not to fix their relationship anymore. Like the goal here is not to make sure people stay together anymore. That's not the goal anymore. It's more of like my job is just to facilitate the process so that they have more awareness. And with the awareness, they can make better decisions for themselves. Like I don't need to jump in to make decisions for them. I don't need to jump in to process things for them. So that is still like still a work in progress that I do kind of go back and forth with sometimes with the couples work, which is the more challenging part for me.
Would you say it's right to say you are teaching them the tools and the strategies, and you are helping them learn about themselves and the other, and the outcome of that relationship, it's the result of the process, and it's not something that that is not your goal. Is that right? The right way to put it?
I think
Because some couples are not meant to be together, like they are not compatible, right?
Yeah. I think when I first started seeing couples, I think this was like a few years back. I think I was very disappointed in myself and very jaded every time people don't stay together. Then I realized that I even doubted like whether is this something that I want to do. But then after a lot of like supervision and also learning, then I realized like actually with my fair share of seeing how people that are very unhappy together and values wise clashes, and they still force themselves to stay together so unhappily, then I don't think that should be the goal. So like, like it should be a choice at the end of the day of like, now I have all this information, now I have all these tools, and if it works out, great. If I have all these tools and awareness and it still doesn't work out, then shouldn't that be telling me something as well? And it comes back to the same choice element where people can choose what they're willing to expand and tolerate and compromise within a relationship versus not as well, right? Because that is essentially like relationship, which is you're two different people, and that means that conflict will always kind of happen. It's a matter of now I know why the conflict happened. Do I even want to expand myself and do things out of my way that I might not usually do, knowing that it will help this other person that I love and care for? But if the answer is like I don't love them enough to even do that, then that's also very telling, right? So I think that's when it shifted, where my goal is not to make sure that people stay together, but it's make sure that people are aware that they have options in terms of what they want, how they want to show up in the relationship. And if they do it differently and they see it changing and it's fulfilling for them, then that's great. But if they do it differently and nothing changed and they still feel stuck, then at least I show them that there's a different option that they can kind of take as well. Like they're choosing their own happiness through it as well.
Mm, mm. I have a question around, because you do both individual and couples work, right? So is there like a benchmark, not benchmark, but like, okay, say you are seeing an individual client talking to you about relationship issues. What would be an indicator you look out for that actually you should do couples work together with individual work, or just couples work is enough already? What informs you of that decision and what you will share with the client?
I feel like most of the time I see like couples, right? So I think generally the indication is a bit easier for me in the sense that even during intake, when I'm gathering information and I feel like there's other stuff that is happening within the individual that is making them very hard to listen to one another, or there's no capacity to even want to expand and compromise or expand and understand, then I might suggest individual, just because I feel like that means that, for example, the easiest way to put it is like two people that wants to be understood and listened to, right? And then they're just fighting to be listened to, and they just don't have capacity to hold for each other. And then that is when usually these cases is either like that those individual maybe have their own mental health stuff going on, like maybe they are struggling with something, or there's so many external stuff that they also need the space to just help figure out on their own process first. Then I would maybe suggest to do it like parallel, like with the couples work, make sure that you have your space. Because ultimately, what is my indication here is that maybe one person need more space, and then I feel like I'm spending a lot of time processing with one person. Then I feel like the other person is like just there. Then I feel like my client is the relationship, not just one person. And I will usually just reflect it back to them and say like, hey, we've been spending a lot of sessions with just processing your stuff and things like that. Then maybe it might be worth exploring, like you should get your own support in terms of like making sure you have your space to process your stuff so that
Yeah.
we can use this space to focus back on the relationship. So
Mm.
that's usually the indication when it's two people, and then I feel like it's kind of like it's the indication is a feeling like it's kind of slanted to one way. Whereas for individual clients, I think it's like when you work through things and you feel like they are doing the work, like they are changing their way of communicating or how they relate to their partner and stuff. But then their feedback always they come back is like, but they are not changing. They don't understand,
Yeah.
Then I feel like okay, then maybe it's worth trying couples work because maybe they don't understand, maybe because there's no one to facilitate their side of the story, for example.
Mm.
Then maybe I would suggest that. Yeah.
Mm. And I feel like I'm giving you a lot of hypotheticals.
That's okay.
Okay, if you have a couple friend and looking at the way they interact, I mean, it's a bit similar to the individual therapy one, but this time a couple, they definitely need couples therapy or would benefit from it. But like when people don't really see that issue, especially usually people don't see it, right? Unless you have a trained eye and you're like, yeah, maybe you should try couples therapy. And also in our society, much more than individual therapy, couples therapy is like what people think of couples therapy is like, oh, you're gonna at the verge of a divorce, then you go for couples therapy, that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
So as a trained couples therapist, when you see your friends going through something like that, what would you say?
I'm just thinking, like, I don't think like any of my friends per se right now are going through something that I feel very urgently like they need to get help. I also realized that there's like a cultural difference where I think the threshold or tolerance level here in Asia is a bit higher compared
Mm.
to when we were in Australia, where people would like even like a bit of like, "Oh, I want to learn how to communicate better with you." People would go for therapy,
Yeah.
couples therapy, or like whether it's like intimacy thing, like we will go for therapy. Whereas in Asia culture, it's like what you said. Sometimes it's like towards the end of the last resorts only, then they might come and see, right? So which is why when it comes to friends and stuff, I feel like even though I feel like it's not okay, then to me it's like maybe their threshold is still okay, that kind of thing. But because they know what I do, most of the time they will come and ask me questions already, which that's my indication of like something's you're not happy with something. But then I will always tell them like I cannot be impartial to like I can't be like neutral with you because you're my friend, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm hearing your side of the story, and then I'm like, even though like my couple therapist brain is like there might be a different side of this story, but then I'm like, you're my friend though, like I would like let you vent and that kind of thing. But if
Mm.
I feel like it comes to the point where I feel like it's getting to a point where they're very, very unhappy, then I
Yeah.
will also just say, like, like this the work that I do, but I can't help you, but I have like colleagues and stuff that can help you, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think it's something that people just don't believe in because they've never experienced it.
Yeah.
And it's like the mindset of like you just have to toughen it out. Relationships are like that, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I agree to a certain extent, relationships are hard. Like I'm not saying
Mhm.
like come for couple therapy and then no conflict will ever happen again, but it's about how do you then manage or navigate those conflict and how do you repair them, right? Then these are things that can at least make it like better for you or happier in the relationship for you as well. So, but I feel like there's a lot of people that has already kind of resigned to that fate that this is just how it's gonna be, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And given that couples therapy, the only phrase I can find is like it's not a big thing in Asia or Asian societies. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have in our culture?
I think just like mental health in general, the misconception is that if you go to therapy in general, couples or
Mm.
individual, you have a problem. No, it's a
Mm.
problem and it's shameful, and like you shouldn't your marriage and your relationship should just be indoors, shouldn't be shared to outside
Yeah.
people, that kind of thing. And I think that's the issue with why mental health is so prevalent or like people struggle so lonely is because there's so much judgment
Mm.
around it, right? So I think the misconception here is like people feel like you have to have something really, really wrong with you to be able to
Yeah.
want to go for therapy. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I don't know if it's the same for couples, and let me know if that's your experience. But I feel like a lot of what deters people from seeking individual therapy is the idea that the problem that I have is a first world problem. It's like not I think similar to what you said, it's like not serious enough. Then will my therapist judge me? This is like a very small thing, and like people have it much worse than me. Why do I? It's like not resilient to like seek help for this kind of small issue, right? Whether it's like worth. It's like one thing is whether it's worth the money to talk about it. The other thing is whether it's like, will I get judged for bringing up something that is small? And this whole idea of like first world problems. I don't know if there's an equivalent in couples therapy, but like, what are your thoughts around this?
I think it's pretty similar. And like when you were saying those comments of like people thinking like whether am I not resilient enough, am I weak, that kind of thing, it's also like the society voices, right? Which is kind of
Yeah.
ingrained into people already. So it's the same thing with the couples work. But I think something that I fundamentally believe is that it's worth because if you're coming for couples therapy, and that means that that is like your most close intimate relationship, right? And
Mm.
how that is also shapes your happiness and your satisfaction in life. So if you look at like basic needs like food and stuff, I feel like relationships and connections with people is also it's also a basic need that
That's true.
is very underrated, you know. So if you're happy within yourself and within the relationship, then how you show up at work, how your day to day, your mental health will also be very, very different. Like I'm sure people that might be listening have also maybe gone through certain relationship that is so hard and so bad that it really affects their day to day life as well. You know, so I feel like it's worth investing in your connections and relationships
Mm.
because ultimately you will always have people around you unless you're like you really don't want to be with anybody and kind of just want to be alone, then that's different. But I think it's very fundamentally us to want to connect and be happy within those connections as well, which is why
Mm.
I feel like it doesn't matter whether it's a small thing or a big thing. If it doesn't make you happy, then it doesn't make you happy, and
Mm.
you can actually do something about it.
Something that came up for me is also one of the resistance to people going for therapy is always a cost thing. Like they will say, oh, it's so expensive. And I mean, it's valid. Therapy is not cheap, right? Okay, so say someone can afford therapy, feels that they need it, but finds it hard to actually start spending the money on therapy just because, okay, firstly, maybe they think it's a first world problem. And like there isn't like I think in Asian budgeting, there isn't like a bucket for mental health, right? There's a bucket for traveling, there's a bucket for parents, for kids, but there isn't like a bucket for, okay, my mental health. What do I need to take care of myself mentally,
Mm.
emotionally? So there isn't that concept, which makes it harder to then, even if you have the money and resources, say I'm going to spend several hundreds on therapy. What would you say to that? Or say, what comes up for you?
I think this thing is something I recently told my relatives, which was very brave of me, being like the youngest in my generation. I was like, I was just trying to tell them, like, you know, when it comes to therapy, whether it's like relationship or individual therapy, like, why can't you just look at it as like a health aspect, right? Like, if you
Mm.
would save so much money and make sure like your health is taken care of, like, you would go and exercise, you would go to the gym, you would like buy medicine, buy vitamins, and invest in your health, then
Yeah.
your mental health and your relational health is also a part of your health and well-being, right? So
Mm.
if you do have the money and the resources to do that, then why wouldn't you want to invest in that as well? Because essentially your mind and body are so connected that you can be like the healthiest person in the gym, but if you are like super disconnected from your emotions and your actual relationship with your body, then it might have different consequences also to your
Mm.
health, like your bodily health.
Makes sense.
So maybe looking at it in a term of like health, because I think people look at it as like you are crazy or you have a problem, but mental health is literally like a spectrum of like health anyway that you can actually, if you have the money to, then why wouldn't you try to invest in it?
Mm.
And I think that's one part, which is mental health in general. But then when it comes to relational health, a lot of times like the couples that I see, they're so busy with like work and the day to day or with children and stuff. And I feel like sometimes couples therapy is like 1.5 hours or 1 hour of like you both intentionally investing time in the relationship.
Mm.
So maybe if looking at couples therapy feels like a we only have problem and go and only we can go, then maybe if you can look at it in a sense of like we are actually spending time to get to know each other with someone facilitating the process, that we can actually
Mm.
get a lot of information to know about each other and to connect better with each other, like, and then wouldn't you want to also invest in that? So like, for example, if you go on a holiday, like a holiday, like as a couple, you also get to spend time on yourself. But holidays are not
Mm,
very sustainable. You can't go all the time every week and stuff. But then if you're already so busy and you need to put in a time where it's just to talk about you guys, other than kids and work and stuff, then that would be a good opportunity also to connect. So maybe seeing
yeah.
it that way might help.
Mm, That's such a nice way to put it, that it's also like an activity, like going to the
Yeah.
movies together, just like any other activity. Of course, it costs more than going to the movies, but it's also like an investment, right? For example, if you talk through an issue that you have been having for a long time, for example, you cannot agree on money stuff. Instead of quarreling about it every single time it comes up, if you have a conversation facilitated by the couples therapist, maybe once you understand each other's perspective, then you're done. You don't need to quarrel about money anymore. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
simplifying it to like a one-time thing. It probably might not be, but um it's a I mean, therapy is a long-term investment. I always see it that way. And
Mm.
what I was reminded of was also I always found it hard to spend in the past, like that's many years ago, find it hard to spend money in general. Like I just cannot
Same.
spend money, just accumulate, accumulate. I think it's like money trauma, right? Like,
Yeah.
still have the survival genes in us.
Yeah.
Where money comes in, it's just everything I buy or spend money on, especially if it's for myself, it's so hard to get it out of my bank account. I hardly
Yes.
spend much. And I always remember my perspective started shifting when there was this friend who had a period of difficulty in her life where she needed to seek therapy. And she said something about, she wished that she had seen a therapist earlier so she didn't have to struggle for such a long time. And after that experience, she will park, like, I think what she said was $10,000. I mean, depending on your budget, like how much money you want to allocate to your mental and emotional health. So in her budget, she actually has this 10K for her mental and emotional health, whether it's going to see a therapist, whether it's going for yoga classes, going for a retreat, all that comes from that pool of money. And she said that's the best thing that she's done for herself. And after hearing that, at first I was like so shocked. What, 10K? Like that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But after that, I thought it makes so much sense. Of course, it doesn't need to be 10K. It depends on like, how much
Mm.
of your income you can allocate. 10K per year, not per month, right?
Right, right, right.
Yeah, so it was quite inspiring. And also, so I guess my point is also when it comes to money, a lot of us come from the perspective of how we were brought up. I also believe that parts of it is genetic, depending on like, what kind of environments your ancestors went through and therefore what you remember about money, right? So when we have the consciousness and awareness of this, it's so important to speak to different people about money.
Yeah.
Really helps me a lot to hear how other people spend money and their perceptions about money.
Mm.
And then also start to question, like, am I acting out of autopilot, this hoarding tendency, right? And I'm
Yeah.
glad to say after many years of like, noticing and working it through, I think money flows out a lot more easily now, not in a anyhow spend money kind of way, but
Mm.
money is like energy, right? It needs to like flow out and then it will come back in. It needs to flow. That hoarding
Yeah.
energy really doesn't feel good inside as well.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, I think money conversations are very much needed, especially in our society, in our culture. And also, it is also a very hard conversation to have precisely because of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to have, but we need to have it.
Yeah, yeah, and interestingly, it's a big conversation or something that comes up quite often in couples therapy as well. Like you said, right?
Mhm.
People usually see money as just money, but
Yeah.
then it might be related to security or like how you grew up, and money might mean control, money might mean power. There's so much meaning to that piece of paper that people think is just money, which is interesting, and I think it's very important to have these conversations as a couple as well, because I mean that's kind of you're sharing, not that you're sharing finances, but you're sharing a life with someone, right? And that means that
Mhm.
your money habits need some understanding to a certain extent also. So yeah, it actually comes up quite a lot in couples
Yeah.
work.
That makes sense. And it also affects things like whether I can quit my job, right? Like, and then that will lead to maybe how your relationships function. That will lead to like basically everything, right? All the areas in our lives are all connected in some ways. And what you said earlier is, you know, when something feels uncomfortable or needs attention, then it's so important to have that curiosity to contact it and see if you can understand it yourself, or maybe like if needed, like speak to someone about it. Not in the echo chamber way. Like, so the worry sometimes is also when people want to speak about certain issues, they want to be validated naturally, right? Then they look for people who thinks the same way as them to get their ideas validated. And that sometimes is not very helpful. So I guess sometimes having
Yeah.
someone objective like a therapist or a coach can be very helpful in working through some of these stuck points or things that you are considering about also.
Yeah. And I think ultimately like what you just said, some people need more validation, some might need more people challenging them. And I think that's the same for therapy as well. I think we both have experiences where, you know, we like how we started the conversation where we felt very safe with one another. And I'm not saying that, you know, every therapist you go to you might feel the same way, and it's okay. Like it's a bit like a dating process, right? You get to know
Yeah.
them, and if it doesn't work for you, you can always look again. And I know that process is very tiring to find someone that fits and stuff,
Mm.
but it's worth for your own safety and your comfort as well to find someone that you can really work with. So I hope like that's not like the big factor that people just stop looking altogether because of like one that experience, for example. But I can completely understand why one that experience will just kind of throw you off and not want you to like you not want to do it again, especially if you gather a
Mm.
lot of courage to do it. But there will be people out there that will suit you, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, like in my previous podcast with Charlie, I also said like there are so many therapists out there. There will be one who suits you in terms of like temperament, the kind of support that you need. And what I said was also it's quite important, at least from my perspective, to do a vibe check with the therapist, which is like go for a free consultation. And if they
Yeah.
don't offer it, ask for it, like 15-minute phone call. Anything just for you to get a sense of the person, and you will have a sense of the person. Like if
Yeah.
someone along the streets, you walk past and you see this person, I don't really like this person. We all have this kind of senses, you know, that
Yeah.
come from somewhere. And
Yeah.
especially for something so delicate like therapy, where you're going to show parts of yourself that might be uncomfortable to show someone, you need to feel safe with that person, at least to a certain extent. You can't expect to feel safe 100%, but at least comfortable enough to start a conversation and um, without feeling like I have to put 100 plus $200 into this session
Mm. Mm.
without knowing if I'm gonna enjoy it, or maybe this person terrifies me, right? I think that is
Yeah.
what holds people back also. So if you have like a free consultation, at least you get a sense, then you know, okay, I'm putting my money into this relationship,
Yeah.
having made a conscious choice to proceed. I think that is so important.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's also okay like along the way if you feel like what has worked for you doesn't anymore. Like I mean just speaking from
Yeah.
experience, like I had a therapist that I was with for a few years and there was nothing wrong with the therapeutic relationship, but it was just like I wanted something different after a
Mm.
few years. And it's always okay to like tell them and like and kind of change, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like just listen to kind of what you need and your what you need might change over time as well.
that's
So like maybe like if you're worried that you invest and then you're stuck with one person, that's not true lah.
yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And I also want to point out that it is often also very hard for clients to raise it to the therapist to break up.
Yeah.
So I think important to validate that. And also, but from a therapist point of view, it is always beneficial for the client to not just drop out without saying anything. Like, I mean, raising the breakup is hard, right? Like, it's easier to just like ghost the therapist or like not reply, which we have both
Yes, we get
encountered.
yeah.
Knowing that it is valid, like, it is understandable. At the same time, it really isn't the best for the process without a closure of sorts, because the alternative would be a client says, oh, okay, I think I might look for someone else instead. At least maybe there's a chance to like summarize, oh, these are the things that we have gone through together in your forward journey, maybe these are the things that you can also consider. At least there's a sort of a wrap up so that the client is in a more like complete space to go with someone else. And I think a lot of maybe the hesitation of bringing it up could be like you scared that the person try to convince you to stay. I mean, exactly the same as a romantic breakup, right? You're
Yeah.
scared that the person will, give you a lot of reasons to stay or like not let you go or like question your decision. I think it's important to trust that a therapist wouldn't do that. Like rather comes more from the place of understanding and then respecting your choice. It will always come from that space. Like that's what a responsible therapist would do. And you wouldn't be made to feel like you are making a wrong decision. It's really for the client's benefit to give themselves the chance to also have a closure rather than, oh, I ghosted my therapist. I mean, but it's very
Yeah.
common now.
It is.
It's
It is.
so common.
It is, and that reflects like what you say, right? The romantic relationship and how people handle it. Like especially now with dating apps, people would just ghost, and that's kind of what is reflecting in this as well. But I also, I guess, want to add on to your point, which is our hope is that the therapist would not push you and not make you feel wrong doing it. We can't guarantee all
That's
might
true.
make you feel that way, but that is kind of
Yeah.
what we want to tell you, which is we try our best to do that a lot, right? It's like more of like a
Yeah.
helping you to also learn how to take control over your needs and your boundaries, right? Making
Mm.
it known to the other person, which is the therapist in this sense, that something didn't work out, or some maybe now it's not the right time. At least you can also practice to foster that for yourself as well, rather than just kind of ghosting or leaving. But I also hope that if you were to ever do this before, the response was also safe, which is something we can't
Mm.
confirm for everybody. But yeah, that's kind of what we hope, like, I guess.
That is a really good and important caveat. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, we also know that not all therapists are ethical. Maybe, yeah, not all will respond in a supportive way. Some might, like, for their own reasons, try to force you to stay or, like, guilt trip you into staying. I mean, all these things do happen. And of course, like what you said, we hope that it's not your experience. You cannot guarantee it. But it is also a very good indication that this relationship needs to end. If the
Yeah, yeah,
therapist
yeah.
responds this way, it's like you try to break up with someone and then they confirm why you want to break up with them.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Then you can
Yeah,
also say, okay, bye, I made the right decision. So good. I don't continue spending time or money with you
correct,
if you are going to respond like that. Right? Because there's
correct.
something that is not professional or ethical about the response in any case.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, we are left with 5 minutes. I want to end off by getting you to share where people can find you, the work that you do, maybe what you enjoy supporting clients through, and anything else you want to share.
I think generally, I think why we're so open about therapy and couples therapy is because we're in the space. I want to validate that this is not something easy that people will go into. Even like, as therapists ourselves, not all of us go for therapy ourselves as well, that kind of thing. So it's not an easy process. But I think I just want you guys to know that it's worth investing in, like your relational health, your mental health is very important because it really reflects how you show up on your day to day. I truly believe that, like, it really changes that. But yeah, in terms of where to find me, you can find me on Instagram. My private practice is called Clarity and Bond Therapy. Generally, like, my information is over there. You can like DM me, or yeah, that's kind of the best way to find me. I offer mostly couples work, but I also work with individuals that might not be ready to bring in their partner, or if even if you're single and you just want to kind of get a feel of like what your needs are in a relationship. It's never
Mm.
too early to start, because I think a lot of times people go into a relationship then only figure out what they need from their partner. So it's always okay to start individually or as a couple as well. I also offer the 15-minute free consult, which you can definitely get a feel. And I'm always happy to, in that moment, if you tell me that that's not a good fit, whether it's logistically or approach wise, I have like other colleagues that I can also recommend. Feel free to just reach out if you feel like there's any questions in terms of relationships. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'll also put your details in the show notes so that people can just find your links and reach out to you. Um, I also wanted to share that I refer a lot of people to Carmen because I really trust her. And I mean, I have screened her, right? I have done my vibe check with her. So yeah, but of course, like if you're interested in working with her, really do yourself a service and, go for a consultation, because that's when you can really like feel. And also for couples therapy, to do that consultation is also for both parties to feel like they are safe with you. Like both need to feel safe. Cannot be like one person like you, the other person doesn't like you. So yeah, really good thing you're offering. Thank you so much for this time that we have spent together.
No, I appreciate you getting me on as well. I think it's very interesting because I listened to your other guest podcasts as well. And it's so interesting to just see how people navigate life and things like that. So I think it's great that this podcast exists so that people can listen to different stories and just understand a little bit more as well.
And then
So
make their
yeah,
decisions, right? Knowing
yes.
that everyone lives their very different lives. And I think podcast is such a great way to show it because we really get the time to go in depth. Like even if you see someone's Instagram, you don't get such a deep insight into their lives. So you might think that, oh, they're just glitzy because they got a good life. But hearing more and understanding more is always a different experience.